take it to court if necessary.
For Best Picture.
Thing. They do it a lot on television. All right, but other things going on this morning. I believe it's 12:30, 12:45. Air Force One scheduled to take off, headed to Hanoi, Vietnam. Unlike Kim Jong-un, President Trump will be flying, not taking a train. And as you can imagine, media all over this already, Brian.
AOC wanted the president to take a train because we want to get rid of airplanes, but they tend to sink. But here's the deal. The president's going to first speak at 8:30 and make some remarks with the governors because he spoke last night and broke some news. But a lot of people are actually souring on this summit 2.0
already
before it actually happens.
Yeah, the president said, I have a special feeling about it. We've developed a very, very good relationship. As long as there's no testing, we are happy. That's what he says. But the media, of course, predicting the worst before it even happens.
Yeah, here's a headline. The Associated Press says this: expectations low as Trump looks for win in the North Korean summit. The Huffington Post, which I every day somehow forget to read. Hanoi summit may do nothing about North Korea's nukes. Trump's still using it for his campaign. I don't love the statement that he made yesterday when he says, if they just don't test, I'm okay with it. But that's an oversimplification. He's not going to give an inch on sanctions because testing's not enough.
Testing's not enough.
Dismantling's enough because they can build without testing.
That's right.
They got about between 20 and 60 bombs. The fact that there's a dash between there means there's a lot we don't know.
But if you don't test, you can't know if it's good, if it's going to work.
It's true. You can outsource testing and different things like that.
Right.
But at the same time, what the president has emphasized is, listen, we haven't given up anything yet. We're coming to the table saying we're not going to loosen sanctions preemptively like other bad deals like the Iran deal like we did in North Korea 25 years ago. President optimistic as we go into this summit.
Keep in mind, this is only the second summit.
Correct. Yep. Here's what he said yesterday.
We have a special feeling, and I think it's going to lead to something very good, and maybe not. I'm not pushing for speed, but we're not removing the sanctions. And we're going to have, I think, a very interesting 2.5 days in Vietnam. And we have a chance for the total denuclearization of an area of the world that was very dangerous.
All right, in terms of what they're actually looking to do in terms of tangibility, Yongbyon is a complex of 390 buildings to stretch 3.4 miles. It's home to 10 nuclear research institutes. It's also got 3 reactors there. It's the country's main nuclear reactor that was opened in 1986. Let's see what they could do to find out what's in there and a pathway to closing it with an inspector on the ground. What else could they do? Declare an end to the Korean War. What could the downside of that? They might have a case to get no longer allow us to have 28,000 troops in the South. Most of all, what the president wants to do is convince Kim Jong-kim that he is not their enemy.
That's right.
And if we're not their enemy, then they could maybe have the attitude of Vietnam. 84% of the people of Vietnam view the U.S. favorably. He's saying, look at the market-based economy. Still communist, I get it. But look at the freedoms that they've had. Look where they were in the 70s. Look where they are right now. Look at our relations right now. We were literally at war with them, and now we chose that venue as a place to host. This could be you. There's a lot of symbolism here.
Kim Jong-un would need those security guarantees. We would need China to make that guarantee as well. And ultimately, you know, they're afraid of liberalization on the Korean Peninsula because of what it means to them. So a lot of moving pieces here.
The president is optimistic. The president has said that the president of China has really helped in the line of communications with Kim Jong-un because they don't want nuclear weapons. They're right next door. But moving on, let's talk about what's happening in Washington. You know, the president declared this national emergency, and now House Democrats are trying to block it, and that happens today. They're going to put it up for a vote today.
Right.
That's right. In the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi saying they'll move forward with a resolution, effectively, that disapproves of the declaration of emergency.
And the president says 100% I'm going to veto it.
Yes. And the question is, how many votes are in the Senate? How many Republicans will flip sides, Brian?
So when you declare a state of emergency, which is done in the past since it put into effect in the mid-'70s, they never really had finances tied to it. It's never been specifically a piece of legislation failed, so I'll declare a state of emergency, exactly like that. So the president says, I like the idea of doing this. I believe, my lawyers lead me to believe that ultimately I will prevail on this and get over $8 billion to build the border fencing, which in the past Democrats have voted for. They're only not voting for it now. So they're probably going to lose some Republicans in the House, and they're probably going to lose some Republicans in the Senate. But they're not going to lose 20, which would override any veto.
That's right. So the president, this is effectively dead in the water. It's a measure the Democrats want to make because they don't like this declaration of an emergency, but they know when the president vetoes it, which he says he will do 100%, they can't override that veto. So this is going to go to the courts, as the president predicted. Remember, Ninth Circuit stayed, all of that, and then ultimately the Supreme Court may decide whether this is viable or not.
All right, so let's talk about how this is being handled. We also know this, that is it 58 former national security officials have decided to sign a petition in a statement on Monday saying that there is no factual basis for President Trump's proclamation of a state of emergency.
Did that shock you, though? I mean,
I know, look at the list. There are some Republicans on there.
There are
James Clapper, Susan Rice, Madeleine Albright, Chuck Hagel.
John Kerry.
A Republican in name only.
Defense, Republican in name only, a lot of never-Trumpers. Defense establishment types. Listen, they like the status quo of Washington. They like the way things work.
They work for Bill Clinton. They work for
nature of
Barack
President
Obama.
Trump. They work for presidents that did things differently. I've written letters like this. I've signed letters like this in Washington. They're used when you're behind the eight ball and you want to use the power you used to have.
How effective are they, though?
Oh, they're effective as they get picked up in the media.
Well, here's the thing. It's totally insincere, the Democrats protesting this, because it's not a cement wall that Pete saw in Israel, which would have been more effective. It's fencing they've already approved. They're just trying to stop the president from doing this because he promised it, and they have an election coming up in a year. Now, if you want to have a state of emergency, the governor of New Mexico yesterday said it's not a state of emergency. We have Beto O'Rourke, whose district was there, said not a state of emergency. Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who is in the National Guard like Pete, in the Air Force National Guard, was stationed there for a few weeks. He went down there indifferent. He came back saying it is the Wild West. He does think we need a state of emergency down there. We're seeing the video now. We did a feature on him. He's going to come back and tell us what he saw. He said a lot of the tactics were very similar to the military tactics they used to evade him that they use in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, the cartels are effectively using tactics to invade a sovereign country, and they're doing it very effectively and very lethally in many cases.
Right. I guess we don't have time to do Governor Inslee, but there's a big story. What Democrats say is when you declare a state of emergency, if you're going to make this work up to the Supreme Court, Mr. President, when we get a Democrat in there, we're going to do something like climate change. We're going to make that a state of emergency. And Governor Inslee of Washington, who's going to run for president, said, he's already looking to do that.
This was in an interview. He said, we're going to sue to stop. We did sue to stop the Muslim ban, and we do not have a national security emergency. He says the real emergency are forest fires, and his wall is a colossal mistake, he says.
They've also threatened to do the same thing with guns.
Yeah.
From climate change to guns. Well, no, they'll try. I mean, look at the slate of candidates running in 2020. It's a pretty extreme group, so we'll see.
All right, 9 minutes after the hour. Jillian Milley, not extreme.
Never. Good morning. Let's get you caught up on some of your news that we're following, starting with this. Vice President Mike Pence is on his way to Colombia. Today, he will meet with Venezuela's opposition leader, Juan Guaido.
Whether that will amount to a criminal conspiracy that can be proved beyond reasonable doubt, we will have to wait for Bob Mueller to tell us. But to not see what is plainly in front of us means you basically don't want to see the evidence of collusion because it is quite abundant.
Congressman Schiff, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks for your time was in lieu of a follow-up question. No pushback on Congressman Schiff there. Here to react is CBN Chief Political Correspondent David Brody, who's been all over this and finds himself a lot of times in the White House press briefing room. David, are you frustrated there has not been pushback on that conclusion that he's come to?
Well, sure, Brian. As a matter of fact, he keeps talking about ample evidence, and all we hear about are contacts and meetings. And the last time I checked, contacts and meetings, I don't know, is not ample evidence. So, you know, the idea that the media wouldn't even push back on this, it raises a lot of red flags, and you have to ask the question why. And I think part of it, at least, is that, let's be honest, Brian, if you inject a truth serum into mainstream liberal members of the media, look, when Adam Schiff says contacts and meetings, yeah, they kind of go along with that. Now, that's a truth serum injection. If they were honest with themselves, they've always said where there's smoke, there's fire. They believe that Adam Schiff is onto something, but there's nothing there.
Roger Stone, contact WikiLeaks, perhaps. Manafort, who was his years in Eastern Europe, he's got a lot of contacts there, was running the campaign for a while. So I guess they're pointing to the Don Jr. meeting and saying that that's ample evidence. He also made the claim in February, February 10th.
Right.
Let's listen.
The president keeps implying that the Senate Intelligence Committee has already found no collusion. What is your understanding of where and how closely are you working together with the Senate Intel Committee?
You know, we are trying to work collaboratively with the Senate. But when people say there's no collusion, they must have a different word for the kind of corrupt coordination of effort between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
So here's the thing. The Senate's cleared him. The last chairman in the House cleared him. And he's saying what?
Yeah, well, here's the problem. His definition of collusion is what exactly? I mean, all of a sudden, it's definitely not the legal definition of collusion. I mean, Adam Schiff is looking for all different types of excuses here. It's interesting, though. Look, he is the head linchpin in all of this. He has been pushing this for 2 years now, and that's very important here because the media has to have him have.
Easier for parents not to vaccinate their children
from making abortion referrals.
A move that could divert millions from pro-choice groups like Planned Parenthood to religious ones. And now Governor Kristi Noem is trying to do the same thing in South Dakota. She joins us now with her reaction. Governor, thank you very much for being here this morning. We reached out to Planned Parenthood. They have not given us a statement on this, but we want your take on what's being done at the federal level, and you're trying to do something very similar in South Dakota. Explain.
Well, the president and his administration are addressing a concern that many people across the country have, and that's that taxpayer funds should not be going towards the funding or referrals of abortions in this country. So in South Dakota, we have legislation as well to clarify how informed consent happens in our state. Planned Parenthood has not been acting in good faith and has been circumventing the process that we have forward, that women and families going into this type of a situation get all the facts of the process and the procedure that they're undergoing. So we have legislation to make sure that they follow the law, and we want to be a state that definitely defends life, that decides that every life has value, and it's incredibly important that we make sure that organizations like Planned Parenthood do not receive federal funds.
We also want to talk to you about Middle America, which you represent. Bill Maher, many are saying that he was mocking Middle America when he said this.
The most affluent and educated people are clustered in just a few cities. The blue parts of America are having a big prosperity party, while that big sea of red feels like their invitation got lost in the mail. The flyover states have become the passed-over states. That's why red state voters are so pissed off. They don't hate us. They want to be us.
Governor, what's your reaction?
Well, I've been all over this country. There's no place I'd rather be from than the heartland. We have the best people in the world that are raising their families there. We feed the world. We have a higher rate of service, men and women who step up to defend the freedoms and liberties of this great country. So I wholeheartedly disagree with what Bill is saying there. I'm just blessed to be from the heartland.
Well, what you're saying is there are different values. You may value family and faith and service, to your point. Things like where your food comes from, where things get built. What is it that elites like Bill Maher don't understand?
Oh, maybe he needs to spend some time in South Dakota because we just have phenomenal people that love our country. They're raising their families and communities that take care of each other, that serve.
As long as there's no testing, we're happy. And so we've done really something, I think, very special with respect to North Korea.
Well, there you go. The President of the United States yesterday addressing the governors in a tux. I guess it was a dress-up dinner party night that the First Lady put together.
Yes, it almost looked like it was in a cave, though. Right. A little dark.
But the President,
lighting, right?
The President's got, he's been in constant contact with Kim Jong-un since their last summit and leading up to the summit. And he feels positive that their personal relationship could provide a breakthrough.
That's right. Summit 2.0. And Ed Henry, Fox News chief national correspondent, is live in Hanoi. The president should be there at some point today, and he's going to be meeting with Kim Jong-un on Tuesday and Wednesday. What can we expect, Ed?
Well, look, the president wants to put some meat on the bones. I mean, he had a success in Singapore. That's 1.0, if you will, the first round in all of this back last June. The handshake you see there, sitting down with the dictator, sort of defying the odds. You remember, you had critics in 2017 saying that the president's rhetoric, fire and fury raining down on North Korea if they didn't stop the missile test, the rockets that were flying over Japan and elsewhere, the president nicknaming the dictator Little Rocket Man. They had critic after critic saying the president is bumbling us into a nuclear war. Just the opposite happened, in fact, in 2018. He's now putting us at least on the path, anyway, to peace. But the president has not gotten the dictator to follow through on the promises of denuclearization. So look, we've got to be clear-eyed about this. There's a lot of business that has to get done here. But it's fascinating to me that just like the critics a year and a half ago were saying he's going to lead us to nuclear war, and the opposite has happened, we now have people, AP, Washington Post, mainstream media outlets doing straight news stories that are saying this could be a nightmare scenario, all kinds of concessions by the president. He may lose big time, basically, here in Hanoi. The thing hasn't even started. Everyone needs to take a deep breath and not get ahead of the facts.
No, it's a great point. Ed, you've talked about the media coverage being pessimistic out the gates. Well, Democrats recently sent a letter to President Trump. This is what it said. They said, "We believe your next meeting with Kim must demonstrate tangible, verifiable progress on denuclearization." They're skeptical. Their critique is he may give away too much. What are you hearing as far as what they're prepared to verify?
You know what's really important is the letter that those same Senate Democrats sent to Barack Obama when he was, oh wait, actually I don't think they ever sent a letter like that. So you had 8 years of the Obama administration that I covered in which North Korea moved closer and closer to having this miniature nuclear weapon that could fit inside a missile. That was the threshold they crossed in 2017, right after Barack Obama left office, that led President Trump to talk about fire and fury, because the North Koreans had made so much progress during the Obama years, and even go before that, the Bush years, the Clinton years. Administration one after the other, Democrat and Republican, did virtually nothing to stop the North Koreans. And so President Trump inherits this huge problem. So are the Democrats right in theory? Yes. President Trump is going to have to be tough here in Hanoi to push Kim Jong-un to follow up on all of these promises. But on the other hand, where were Democrats in the previous 8 years?
I do think the Bush administration was tough. They did the 6+1 talks for a while, and Condoleezza Rice thought they had something more tangible. It turns out they could not be trusted. That guy died. Kim Jong-il died. His son took over and might be tougher. We'll see. Here's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the difference between the two administrations, Obama and his.
And Cower has been upended by President Trump. We've put real economic pressure on the North Koreans. We've built out a global coalition. One of the critiques is that we go it alone. We've built out the world's coalition to communicate to Chairman Kim that now is the time, now is the moment, and I hope we'll make real progress on that this week.
So, you know, see it. He has no problem calling out the previous strategic patience did not work, and President Obama basically admitted that when he handed off the White House to President Trump, right?
Right. And what did Secretary of State Pompeo say? Pray and cower, that was what the Obama administration was doing. So what needs to happen here? You're right. There needs to be tough steps in terms of pushing North Korea to denuclearization, but also where President Trump gets credit is the tough economic sanctions that have pushed North Korea to the table, pushed their economy to the brink. The key here is to not get tricked by North Korea and start easing those economic sanctions, which they desperately want to see, by, you know, maybe Kim Jong-un saying, well, I'm going to take some tiny itty-bitty steps towards denuclearization. No. The president has said previously, before Hanoi, that, in fact, there needs to be a move towards full denuclearization before the boot comes off the throat. And he's going to have to stick to that.
All right.
Ed Henry, thank you very much.
All right, Ed on the ground for us. All right, 23 minutes down before the top of the hour. Jillian Milley also on the ground for us.
And that's right. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. Let's get you caught up starting with this. Virginia's lieutenant governor facing sexual assault allegations compares calls for his resignation to lynchings. Listen to this.
If we go backwards and we rush to judgment and we allow for political lynchings without any due process, any facts, any evidence being heard, then I think we do a disservice to this very body in which we all serve.
2 women have accused Justin Fairfax of sexual assault. He denies the allegations. Top Democrats were quick to rush to judgment after Jussie Smollett allegedly faked a hate crime. DNC Chair Tom Perez defending those who called the actor's since disputed claim a, quote, modern-day lynching on Fox News Sunday.
We acted on the facts as we knew at the time. And here are the facts that we know today. Hate crimes are on the rise.
Smollett is charged with filing a false police report in Chicago. He maintains his innocence. A drug manufacturer calls out the FDA, saying the agency opened the floodgates for the opioid crisis.
The root cause of this epidemic
is the FDA's illegal approval of opioids for the treatment of chronic pain.
Ed Thompson says the top-selling opioid, OxyContin, was only ever meant for short-term pain, but the FDA expanded its use to anyone with a chronic illness. More than 47,000 people died from an opioid overdose in 2017. An athletic dog wows the crowd at a football stadium, showing off its wide retriever skills. This is Yuri chasing down a Frisbee 83 yards and catching it in the air. It was part of the halftime show at an Orlando Apollos game in the new Alliance of American Football. The team said it was a new world record Frisbee catch. It's a pretty talented dog.
And by the way, I hear the Orlando Apollo are the class of that league. They're the best team. Steve Spurrier coaches them.
It's not about a cost. It's about an investment. Of course we can afford it. There's no question we have to be practical. But being practical also recognizes that climate change is an existential threat to us as human beings.
So how do they plan on paying for it? Here to weigh in is host of Varney & Company on the Fox Business Network, Stuart Varney. Stuart?
Can I get right to it?
Yes.
The Green New Deal financially is an absolute non-starter. You cannot, repeat, you cannot pay for it. It's overreach financially of historic proportions. You absolutely cannot do all of this. It's a blending of green politics, green policies, and socialism. You put it together, it's absolutely... But look, Kamala Harris and her supporters don't care. To them, it's a question of, do you want to save the planet or not? And, you know, she says cost is not important because it's an existential threat to human beings. That's extraordinary stuff.
But I watched Senator Feinstein over the weekend, too. She was pinned down by some extremist group with kids involved. She says, come to my office where you're not going to be screaming at me. At which time he says, back to New Green Deal. She goes, it's not practical. It's not going to pass. I have a plan, but it's something that's going to pass. With government, you have to get something that's plausible. And Dick Durbin also said this thing makes no sense. It's incoherent. I'm talking about Democrats.
And then the children, the youngsters, the teenagers who are confronting Dianne Feinstein, they came out with, well, we've got to do this because my generation is going to pay the price. We've only got 12 years left. That's the argument, isn't it? If you don't do it, we're all dead. If you do it, we're utterly financially bankrupt.
Well, even if we do it, you know who isn't going to? And that's the meeting with Dianne Feinstein that Brian...
I give her so much credit for doing that.
Yeah,
she goes, I don't care if you put this on tape.
She got slammed by the left for that as well, ultimately. But you know who's not going to do a Green New Deal? China. India, Russia, all the Middle East. So as we handcuff ourselves, the rest of the world won't.
Absolutely. But hold on. China wants us to do the Green New Deal. They want us to bankrupt ourselves with this nonsense. And they, meanwhile, will take over the world.
Meanwhile, they walk around their cities in hospital masks because it's so thick with pollution.
That's right.
Real quick, the President of the United States yesterday did make some news as he addressed the governors, and he says, listen, I'm going to put the tariffs on hold for a good reason. Let's watch.
We're doing very well with China, and if all works well, we're going to have some very big news over the next week or two. And we put ourselves into a position of strength for the first time in about 35 years, or probably a lot more than that.
This is very good news for the economy and for the markets, because any kind of deal, no matter what the deal is, will help our economy when you get rid of these tariffs. It's all-round good news. By the way, the market today will open very close to an all-time high because of that
How does the president's meeting with Kim Jong-un affect our relationship with China? Because they don't want nuclear weapons either. They're next door.
It's a tangential effect, not directly affecting the market or the economy. It's a political question more than anything else.
My hope isn't a shopping spree, a 6-year shopping spree that the Chinese just decide to buy stuff from us. We can't have that. This is a moment of their vulnerability. It has to be a restructuring. And anything that Robert Lighthizer leads, I feel good about. When Mnuchin leads, I don't.
Okay, you want a hardline Trump approach, and you may well get that in the long run. The initial deal will be they buy a ton of stuff.
It's got to be all laid out.
That will be the initial deal.
No, it's got to be all laid out.
At that apple?
No.
I'm with Brian. You need it right here. This is our moment.
It's where he's with
there will be checks and balances, won't there? There will be an agreement, and then we will have to find out, is China living up to that agreement? And that's over the long term. You won't know that on day one. Sure. It won't happen.
Stuart Varney's trying to get himself booked later in the week. That's what this is about. All right? I mean, that's what's happening, yeah. Hey, watch his show from...
In just hours, President Trump is taking off for that second summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un.
It's fascinating to me that just like the critics a year and a half ago were saying he's going to lead us in
nuclear war, and the opposite has happened. We now have people that are saying this could be a nightmare scenario.
If he is successful, that's why they have to deny the success, because then they would have to explain why they didn't get it.
There's ample evidence of collusion of the campaign.
He keeps talking about ample evidence, and all we hear about are contacts and meetings. And the last time I checked, contacts and meetings, I don't know, is not ample evidence.
2020 presidential hopeful Kamala Harris insists that we can afford the Green New Deal.
It's not about a cost, it's about an investment. Of course we can afford it.
The Green New Deal, it's overreach financially of historic proportions. You cannot pay for it.
Performance by an actor in a leading role.
Meeting with Kim thus must demonstrate tangible, verifiable progress on denuclearization and reducing tensions with the North. But the president last night shot back at that criticism.
We've given up nothing. The sanctions are on, everything's on, but we have a special feeling. We have a chance for the total denuclearization of an area of the world that was very dangerous.
Now, the White House says the goal in Vietnam is to build upon the 4 pillars agreed to last June. Here they are: the establishment of new relations, a lasting and stable peace, complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and recovering POW MIA remains. But, of course, denuclearization has not yet occurred, and with this summit will come pressure to demonstrate progress. Secretary of State Pompeo, you see there, already en route. The president actually addresses the nation's governor in about an hour at the White House. Then he will head for Hanoi shortly after noon, guys.
All right, yeah, we'll see what happens. They're going to start working some things on the plane. They got a few hours to get it together.
Even Tuesday and Wednesday.
And Vietnam is certainly ready. I just think the symbolism of Vietnam means so much because where we were with them relations in the 70s couldn't be worse. According to a Pew Research poll, 84% of the Vietnamese have a positive image of the United States. What they've done with trade and with their personal economy has been phenomenal. They are tighter with us than they are with China right now.
No, it's true. I mean, technically that war ended differently than the Korean War, however, unfortunately, with the state being unified and
after 2 years.
After we abandoned. Yeah, but it's a great comparison, a great place to hold it.
Senator Lindsey Graham was talking about it. Listen to this.
Let's give Trump the latitude he needs to get the result we all want. Number one, how well did other people do before Trump? He was handed a very bad hand on North Korea. Obama let the whole world just run wild. And when Trump came in, they were developing missiles and testing bombs. All that has stopped. We have a goal now. Give up your nukes. We'll provide you the security you need and help you become more prosperous. So what I hope will happen is that out of this negotiation, we'll have a roadmap and sort of a timetable that will get us there. And if Trump wants to adjust what he said before, to take some of the pressure off now, to get them to move at a faster pace, I'm all with him.
Say what you want. President Trump has taken on the big issues. Iran deal, crushing ISIS, North Korea. These were all left on his table. Venezuela. They're all left for him to figure out. He's taking them all head on.
He is. And a couple of things are going on right now. There's no doubt about it. North and South Korea have better relations. Japan and North Korea, Japan feels a lot less threatened. China doesn't know what to make of us because the president took the playbook, the normal playbook, diplomatic playbook, and he tore it up and put it back together upside down. And it's thrown off Kim Jong-un, it's thrown off the United Nations to the point where people are like, I don't know what to expect between these two. What I think would be great, would be very interesting to see if they could declare how many weapons they have between 20 and 60. I think it would be great to declare where their weapon sites are because we know. We need to know if they're going to come clean and tell us exactly where we think they are. And if they could start allowing inspectors on the ground. And then we turn around and we pump humanitarian aid in. And then these people start to be able to eat. And when they try to defect, they won't have worms inside them, and they won't be starving to death. So all they need is some food and some hope. And maybe Kim Jong-un, in firing 4 people last week, is starting to plow the ground to make some changes. At least we have a chance.
Guess who knows whether that's possible? The president and someone like his Secretary of State. The guys in the room in that moment staring down the dictator. That's why we're following this so closely.
And domestically, we're looking at 2020. Democrats, so many people have thrown their hats their names into the hat. They're going to be crossing the country campaigning. And Bill Maher was talking about middle America. Remember when Hillary Clinton in 2016 was talking about deplorables? He kind of said something very similar, talking about middle America, the flyover states. Listen to this.
The most affluent and educated people are clustered in just a few cities. The blue parts of America are having a big prosperity party, while that big sea of red feels like their invitation got lost in the mail. The flyover states have become the passed-over states. That's why red state voters are so pissed off. They don't hate us. They want to be us.
Be us?
If that's the theory, that's great news. If that's the theory among Democrats, it's great news for the president's party.
That is still the mindset of the left, of the elites, they believe that you are deplorable. But President Trump sees it differently. He says, you are the forgotten men and women. You have been left behind by elites who are self-serving. They build walls for themselves, but not a wall for you. It's a double standard, and they just admit it time and time again.
So you were with Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota. She heard this and responded.
Oh, maybe he needs to spend some time in South Dakota because we just have phenomenal people that love our country. They're raising their families in communities that take care of each other, that serve each other, and we have a work ethic that cannot be compared to anyone else. So, you know, our people in the heartland do the hard work that makes this country strong, and we're just so proud of where we are and where we come from.
It's part of the reason why people haven't figured out the success of Fox News, because you go to Los Angeles, Washington, and New York, and people go, yeah, I don't watch that. And then the rest of the country does. Why is Fox #1? Is because we think the so-called flyover country matters. Those people matter. Being patriotic matters.
You're so fortunate that you grew up in New York and you still have this mentality. I'm so grateful for growing up in South Carolina. You're probably grateful for where you from where you came, because you understand the rest of the country. And if you grew up in New York, you have no clue what goes on in the middle of the country, what goes on in the South. They love this president because he fights for them, and he stands up and he's not afraid to say what he believes.
But he's president because he smashed the blue wall.
Correct.
He took Wisconsin, Michigan. He almost took Minnesota.
Yes,
right.
He went to the places that had been left behind by policies that benefited the coasts, and then he reminded people why America is special: patriotism, faith. Service to your country. Where do the folks who serve in our military come from? From Middle America. Where do we make things? Where do we grow things? All the things that benefit our entire country are lost in the minds of folks like Bill Maher.
The media is in New York, because this is where the interview, when you're trying to get an interview, everyone comes to New York, and it's easy for those individuals that we're trying to interview to come on our show. But it would be wonderful if the media would just go in the middle of the country, if these headquarters would just be placed somewhere else, so they get a grasp of what's going on around the country.
You know who did? Roger Ailes started this company from Ohio, and Mike Douglas show is from Ohio. So
who became a pro-life activist. Watch.
There's still a part of me that isn't sure. I know. But the one thing that all experts agree on is that at this stage, the fetus can't feel anything.
Sorry to bother you, but they need an extra person in the back room. Are you free?
I saw it, and it was like it was twisting and fighting for its life.
Producers expected the movie would come with controversy, but they didn't expect an R rating that was handed down by the Motion Picture Association of America. And here with reaction is the actress who plays Abby in the movie, Ashley Bratcher. Ashley, thanks for coming on again.
Of course.
You were on recently telling us your story and why you wanted to accept this role as an actress and how controversial it is. But the rating just came out as an R. What was your reaction?
I honestly kind of anticipated this because abortion is R-rated. And for the MPAA to give us that rating, we don't have nudity, we don't have sex, we don't have language. So the only thing that they could give us an R for is violence. So that means that they agree that abortion is a violent and disturbing act.
And the folks who were producing this movie, a Christian film company, they were not expecting this. They were expecting PG-13, right?
Well, we were hoping for it. I mean, because we would like for teens to be able to go by themselves to the theater, because, you know, they can go in many states across the United States and have an abortion without parental consent, as young as 13, but they can't go see this movie without parental consent.
That's a good point.
It's really disturbing.
What changed Abby's mind? How many abortions did she perform?
Abby facilitated 22,000 abortions during her 8 years working as a clinic director. And when she was called back during her 8th year to assist on ultrasound-guided abortion, she saw for the very first time that there was a fully formed baby in the womb, that it was not just a clump of cells, that there were so many lies she had been told by Planned Parenthood, and she saw the humanity in the womb.
Let's show a clip of the movie, Planned Parenthood's reaction when Abby walked away. Watch this.
We are paying you to be a perfect instrument of corporate policy. We are an abortion provider.
I can't be a part of this anymore.
Congratulations. You've made an enemy of one of the most powerful organizations on the planet.
That had to be tough for her. You met with her. She lives in Texas.
Yeah.
And why did you want to do this movie? Tell us your story.
Yeah, Abby's story is so compelling because anytime that someone does a complete 180 and they go from being adamantly pro-choice to saying, now I'm pro-life, you have to wonder why. And not only did Abby do that, but now she has a ministry called And Then There Were None. So Abby serves abortion workers and she helps get them out. So if they're looking for financial support, emotional support, they need healing, she provides that for them through And Then There Were None. And to date, she's had almost 500 workers leave the industry. So that's also something to me that says, okay, if you can get 500 people across the United States from different clinics to say the same thing, there's too many coincidences for me to believe that this isn't happening. There's something going on that America isn't seeing.
Why did you want to tell this story?
Because I was compelled as soon as I knew what Abby knew, when I heard her describe what abortion was, I was blinded. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that a year ago, I wasn't as pro-life. I was one of those on the fence that thought, well, I'd never have an abortion, but I could never tell anyone else not to. But the way that I see it now is
went to the game in a bad mood, I think. I think they might have had a fight or something right before, right? Don't you think? And then this just like added to it.
I know. I think she took an elbow to the face.
Let me see. Let me see.
I would say
Where's
this.
the elbow?
You know, it's remarkable, by the way, they had a lot of room in the Avalanche game to move around. So I think he could have avoided not hitting her. The other thing I like to add is the worst scenario is when you get out of the way and she gets hit by a puck. So at least you could say I was trying to do the right thing by catching the puck at your expense.
He caught the puck and gave it to his mom?
Yeah.
Okay.
The relationship is over.
Buy the girlfriend a beer. She'll be fine.
You know what? Don't go to hockey games. That's what I get from with somebody special and your mom.
Smart.
Meanwhile, Dan Bongino has nothing to do with this story, but he's got something else to talk about. He's a Fox News contributor, author of Spygate, and he's the man.
Yeah, that guy's not getting a second date, Brian. Unlike Donald Trump, who got a second summit with Kim, that guy's out, so he has no shot.
I know. All right, Dan, what can we expect? What do you think will happen?
Well, you know, there's a couple things here. First, I think we need to both come to a joint agreement on what denuclearization actually means. Is it just the decommissioning of Yongbyon? Is it going to be a full recount of what the North Koreans actually have? I think we all, you know, in the studio there and here, we need to understand that nobody really realizes right now or understands how many nuclear weapons or how capable some of those nuclear weapons are that the North Koreans have right now. Do they have a reentry vehicle? So once we could come to a common definition of what that denuclearization actually means, I think that would be a good first step and a full accounting of what they have.
You know, Dan, you're in Hanoi for us for the Fox News channel. Well, the media here and some there have already made their predictions about what will happen. Take a listen.
When it comes to this summit, you can take the under. This is not going to be something that produces a massive breakthrough.
I mean, let's just be frank. He felt like he got a good press after the last one, and he figures another photo op might do that, but it does look like there's really not a lot.
Chuck's already called it only a photo op.
Yeah, this is really, you know, the peak media stupidity right now, guys. I mean, does anybody really believe, given our history with things like this, whether it was German reunification, which took forever, whether it was the, you know, Reagan-Gorbachev summits, which started out abysmally, by the way. I mean, who thought, if you're in the media, what did you think was going to happen? Did you think Kim was going to drive in on this train, this private train, with his nuclear weapons in the back and hand over the triggers to Donald Trump? I mean, can you be that naive to put yourself on TV and chattering like this and spitting out this nonsense? Is ridiculous. Think of it this way, guys. If North Korea is at a 9 out of 10 on the danger scale for the United States right now, and Trump can gradually get that down to an 8 or a 7 or a 6, how is that not a success? And what is Chuck Todd going to, I mean, what's Chuck Todd's alternative plan? A nuclear war? I mean, what's he going to say next if Donald Trump denuclearizes the peninsula? That Trump screwed up because he cost the defense industry jobs for a nuclear war?
But, you know, Dan,
I mean, Chuck Todd's ridiculous.
But what you're trying to say is this is worthy of analysis. You don't have to cheer down. you could analyze what would a good deal look like? What would an okay deal look like? What would a bad deal look like? That's usually what we do on things like this. But instead, it's like, you know what? It's not going to go well. You know it's going to be underachieving. You know that you didn't prepare. So where did this come from? Last thing I just want to bring you to, Young Pak, who's an expert in this area from South Korea, says the president is making a mistake in that he's used to his one-on-one interaction producing results in his business career, that you cannot transfer that to international politics. How do you feel about that?
Brian, we've already had results we haven't seen with prior presidents. I don't know what he's talking about. We've had the remains of our soldiers brought back. We've had no testing. Also, remember, the North Korean economy is about 90% dependent on China. China, they have to export coal and minerals to China to stay alive. The North Koreans can't feed their military, Brian. The North Koreans, I don't think, care that they can't feed their people, the government. I think they do care when they can't buy off their military. That's via sanctions by Donald Trump. These people saying this are saying this clouded through the lens of the Trump derangement syndrome glasses. That's it. Those aren't realistic statements. They're nonsense.
Well, Representative Adam Schiff recently, speaking of nonsense, went on another program yesterday talking about Russian collusion, the narrative for the last 2 years, the Bob Mueller investigation. Here's what he says. He's got evidence. Listen.
There's ample evidence of collusion of the campaign, and it's very much in the public record. Whether that will amount to a criminal conspiracy that can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt, we will have to wait for Bob Mueller to tell us. But to not see what is plainly in front of us means you basically don't want to see the evidence of collusion because it is quite abundant.
Congressman Schiff, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks for the follow-up question. Dan?
You know, this is the sleaziest member of Congress. Adam Schiff is ripping this country apart, thread by thread, in an effort to stay relevant because he wants to continue to do CNN media hits. This guy's a joke. He says the evidence of collusion is right in front of us. But, guys, when you say that, typically you actually produce said evidence, which he has failed to do, Mueller has failed to do, and even Andy McCabe, the #2 at the FBI, who directed large portions of the investigation, has already said, guys, that the information's already been made public. Where is this evidence? And one more thing on this. There is evidence of collusion out there with Adam Schiff, who at that Aspen summit actually met with the producer of the Dirty Dossier and had this meeting. That's already been reported. Where's Adam Schiff? Why isn't he recusing himself? He needs to account for his collusion with the Dirty Dossier producer.
Hey, Dan, it's official. You do not have jet lag. You are like shot out of a cannon this morning. Look at you.
Yeah, I've been staying on Eastern time, so I sleep during the day here. I just got up a little while ago. It's great. You just have to close the blinds. No light. It works great.
Don't wake him for lunch. You're used to these trips.
Dan, thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
All right, let's hand it over to Jillian, who has some headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning. Good morning to you at home. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo making it clear the Alabama woman who left the U.S. to join ISIS cannot return. Hoda Muthana is pleading to come back with her toddler son. Her father is suing the Trump administration to try and force her return. Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez slams Senator Dianne Feinstein for telling a group of kids that the Green New Deal is unrealistic.
I don't think that working on an issue for 30 years alone is what qualifies is what makes someone qualified to solve an issue. A lack of urgency is going to kill us.
Ocasio-Cortez says, climate change delayers are the new, quote, climate deniers. The flu is no match for this NASCAR superstar. Brad Keselowski fighting through his illness to win big at the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500.
There have been 4 last lap passes in Atlanta. Turn 4. For the final time, Brad Keselowski.